Becoming Undone is a podcast for those who dare bravely, risk mightily, and grow relentlessly. Join me, Toby Brooks, as I invite a new guest each week where we can examine how high achievers transform from falling apart to falling into place. If you're following along, just kicked off a new multi-part docu-series about the life, the lessons, and the legacy of Coach Dick Tomey. Fortunate enough to have Jesse Sapolu here joining us, four-time Super Bowl champion, needs no introduction. But Jesse, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. Glad to get on and talk about Coach Tomey.
Yeah, this is great. And I'm looking forward to digging in. I know you were one of the first high level recruits that he was able to land. He was relatively young in his coaching career at Hawaii, his first head coach stop, as we've kind of talked about a little bit on the show. Tell me a little bit about your upbringing and your story and how Coach Tomey came into the picture for you.
I was kind of a troubled kid as a sophomore. My grades weren't really good, and then I transferred from one high school to a high school where I ended up attending my the second half of my sophomore, junior, and senior year at Farrington High School. And there was a coach there that a head coach at Farrington High School that kind of took me under his wing. Because when the school that I came from, I had 6 Fs in that first semester.
Wow.
Yeah, and the reason, not because I was dumb, is because I didn't go to class. I had
Yeah.
low self-esteem, and just caught the bus to make my parents believe that I was going to school, but I went straight to Waikiki to the beach and some of my friends, and that was the story. And then finally, my parents got called into the office, and they didn't realize how bad my situation was, and in the Samoan culture, they spank you hard. So, but I promised them that if I would just transfer schools, I would straighten up and try to change my life. So when I went to Farrington, that was the number one thing is to get my grades up. Went to summer school, and then I played my junior year at Farrington, and it's the first time I got a letter from a college. It was the University of Hawaii. And then I saw Coach Tomey towards the middle of my junior season, and you talk about a kid having self-esteem from the lows of the low, where I had 6 Fs to where, now there's a man that's telling me that if I continue to straighten up and do the right things, he would love to have me at the University of Hawaii.
Yeah.
So it's the first time I met Dick Tomey there. And then all of a sudden, because Dick Tomey came to recruit me, a lot of the other big schools came over.
Yeah. Such such a great story. And I have to think that for you, that external validation, a Division I coach, Hawaii was a relatively recent D1 addition, and having someone recognize that you had potential to play beyond high school had to be great. But you were, as you mentioned, pretty quickly, you rocketed up some recruit boards and became a pretty hot commodity. I read that you were all but kind of salted away as going to, heaven forbid, Arizona State, but a final visit by Coach Tomey changed your mind. What was it about that visit or his recruitment and his relationship building with you that convinced you? A lot of people might have thought that, these mainland programs are higher profile and you've got a better opportunity if you go there. What convinced you to stay home?
Well, first of all, Arizona State was number 2 in the nation at the time. People don't know. They just beat Nebraska in the bowl game. And they had a coach named Frank Cush, and which they named their stadium after. So
Yeah.
he was a renowned coach. Coach Tomey was coming to Hawaii, and he was such a positive force. And the way he came across on TV is that he believed in himself. But he pushed the fact that Hawaii is no longer independent. They're about to join the Western Athletic Conference. And, the Western Athletic Conference were going to bring in some of the schools like BYU,
Mm-hmm.
Colorado State, Utah. Utah was in was in the whack back then. So everybody was positive towards that. But when I went to Arizona State, the reason why that visit was really good is because there was another high profile recruit from Hawaii that went with me on that visit. And, we talk among each other and we had fun during that visit. And we had some local kids from Hawaii that were already at Arizona State, including his brother, a kid named Wayne Apuna.
Mm-hmm.
And we came back saying that, we're going to go to Arizona State. And the local recruiter, from Arizona State that had ties in Hawaii was already waiting for us, in Hawaii on our way back. In fact, there was a joke. There was a Coach Lumpkin that recruited me. That Farrington was one of his schools on behalf of Coach Tomey. Coach Tomey told him to go to the airport and wait for me to get off the plane. And he saw me get off in a cowboy hat with a big A on
Oh no.
it. And he told Coach Tomey, I think we've lost him, and and then Coach Tomey came over to the house. I think, Toby, what's amazing about Coach Tomey is he took time to understand the culture,
Yeah.
and he understood how important culture was to the life of a Polynesian, especially a Samoan family. And I know he spoke to. There's a guy that I still see in Hawaii. He used to be the mayor of Hawaii for 2 terms, Mufi Hanneman. He had an older brother that was close to my dad, named Gus Hanneman. He was the guy that kind of led the community then. Advised Coach Tomey, if you go to the Sapolu house, you go sit on the floor.
Hmm.
It's the ultimate respect shown for a Samoan family. So when Frank Kush came to visit, our house, he sat on my dad's recliner, and in a suit. And of course, in the Samoan culture, we go buy cookies and coffee and stuff, just to serve. But when Coach Tomey came in Aloha shirt, he just sat on the floor. And I remember my sisters and my mom got off the couch to stand him up, and sit him on the couch.
Yeah.
And that kind of sold my mother, It's not that Frank Kush was a bad man. They loved him too, but there's what Coach Tomey did was just connect the culture
Yeah.
with how he was going to coach me if he was going to be the guy that was going to take care of me for the next 4 to 5 years.
Yeah.
And it was pretty much over. And, because in fact, I already called the recruiter from Hawaii that I was committed fully to. I'm sorry, the recruiter from Arizona State that was there getting ready to sign the both of us the next day that I was ready to sign with Arizona State. And Coach Tomey came the night before, and I thought
Mm.
I thought my sisters were talking about coming to Arizona, visit me in Tempe, everything. And then Coach Tomey turned the whole thing around that one night,
Yeah.
and I remember him saying, recruiting is never over until it's over.
Mm-hmm.
You become a great recruiter because you never give up. And I'm glad that I got to play under him and things worked out.
Yeah. I think maybe I did coach a little bit of a disservice in the first episode because he's not renowned as a fantastic recruiter. If you look at 5 stars versus 4 stars versus 3 stars, he didn't routinely land a draft class or a recruiting class rather that was ranked as high as the USC's or later in the career Oregons of the world, but he recruited his kind of player,
Mm-hmm.
the blue collar, the family,
Yeah.
and I saw that early in his career. I've seen it at least at Hawaii. I definitely saw it at Arizona. You're 18 years old though at this time. What are your wildest dreams? Are you thinking if I go to Hawaii instead of ASU? Am I going to be able to play in the NFL? Or are you just thinking very next step, college football?
No question. I thought, like I said, that was the highest I think Arizona's ever been ranked.
Mm-hmm.
I thought if I go to Arizona State, I'm going to play in big bowl games, and playing in big bowl games, and that's just an 18-year-old dreamer, right? And if I play in big bowl games, that NFL is right behind that.
Mm-hmm.
I was confident in my ability. Um, but once it was, it was just to see the tears in my mom's eyes that I knew she wanted me deep in her heart to stay.
Yeah.
Is why I made my decision, and the fact that Coach Tomey, told her that he would take care of me
Yeah.
and that he would create that family atmosphere. She wasn't sure what kind of atmosphere I was going to be in Arizona because, to us back then, going past California was a big deal for kids
Right.
from Hawaii.
Right.
So,
Yeah. And every game's a plane ride away and hours and hours.
hmm hmm
So you obviously were immersed in that culture your whole life. It's the only thing you had known at that point. But Coach Tomey is this little white dude from Indiana. He's not Samoan, clearly. But I love this idea of he got there and he didn't put on airs. He immersed himself in that. He learned what to do, what not to do. How do you
yes.
think he was able to embrace that culture at Hawaii? And I saw it later in his career as well, but how did he incorporate that into what you all did in building a culture for the football program at UH?
Well, I think that the fact that he put forth the effort, you know, Toby, games in Hawaii starts at 8 o'clock in the morning. You know, the NFL games, right?
Hmm.
So what I would do is I would go to Sunday school for a little bit, and it was a routine that I did. And then when church started, I snuck back to our house because my dad was a minister and watched the game. So my dad wouldn't know that I was missing because once church starts, there's a lot of people, right? So I would sneak back and watch NFL games and not go to church after Sunday school. So I'm sitting there watching the game. All of a sudden, I hear my sister calling my name. Look, Jesse. I'm like, what the heck is she doing looking for me, right? Not knowing that Coach Tomey was attending church and my dad saw him. And then when he saw Coach Tomey, he looked over to the choir where I usually sit. I was nowhere to be found, so he motioned to my mom to have my sister come up. And now my sister's looking for me, right? And she goes, "What are you doing? Coach Tomey's at church." I'm like, "Oh gosh," and so Coach Tomey attended church, and Coach Tomey still jokes about that in one of his because the church is conducted in the Samoan dialect. So, he's sitting there for an hour and a half not understanding what's going on, right? So Coach Toby said, and what my sister came at some point and says, "Coach, you don't have to stay. They're going through the financial report now."
He,
And he
he was
goes,
just being
here's,
respectful.
yeah, he's trying to be respectful. He said, "Here's this howdy guy sitting there having no idea what's going on." But it's that effort. It's that effort. If I was in his position, if I was a coach, and I go into a church with a foreign language that I have no idea what's going on, I would have reservations going in because I'm not as secure in that situation as Coach
Hmm.
Tomey was. But he was there to establish himself with the community, and he did. And
Yeah.
what's funny about it, Toby, is that four guys from my high school in that window of 5 years, four guys went on to the NFL to
Wow.
play.
That's incredible.
Significantly.
Yeah.
Not just playing for 1 or 2 years.
Right. Tremendous.
The Noga brothers, Nu'u Fa'aola,
Hmm.
he started as a running back,
Yeah.
and me. Yeah.
Yeah. It was an exciting time for Hawaii football. The move to the WAC, Aloha
hmm
Stadium is brand new,
Yeah.
50,000 seats. I don't know exactly when the Pro Bowl started coming there, but definitely football in Hawaii became a destination. Aloha Bowl, Oahu Bowl. I mean, there were a lot of things that started during
Well,
Coach Tomey's
I,
tenure there.
I don't know if you remember, but the Hula Bowl
Hmm.
was right next to the Senior Bowl as far as popularity. The
Yeah.
Hula Bowl was, when I played in the Hula Bowl, we had John Elway, Dan Marino.
Wow.
you
Yeah.
know, that played in that bowl game. In fact, I was talking to Gary Kubiak because he was one of our quarterbacks. Um, on my Hula Bowl team. So, and when Coach Tomey came and Hawaii went to Division I and became part of a conference, they went 6-5.
Hmm.
No, they went 5-6 in Coach Tomey's first year.
Right.
People were hoping they win 2 games. And although they won 5 games, there were about 3 games that they really had a legitimate chance of winning it.
Yeah.
So and then the next year was my senior year, and we went 6-5.
Hmm.
And then the next year we went 8-3. And there was a 2-year period. I think it was between my sophomore and junior year. We went 8-3 my sophomore year. We went 9-2
Yeah.
my junior year, and we were on the 1 yard line. Going in, we ran out of time to
Hmm.
go 10-1, and that was the first time ever the University of Hawaii was ranked in the top 20. We
Yeah.
were, I think, 17th in the UPI and 18th on the AP or something like that.
Yeah.
And Toby, in those days, there was not a lot of ranking bodies. There was
Hmm.
just 2. So if
Yeah.
you made it, you really deserve to make it.
Right.
There was no ESPN poll.
Right.
So that was a highlight too when Coach Tomey came, and then we started playing on national TV. I played in 2 national TV games, which
Hmm.
it was Hawaii was University of Hawaii always played on Saturday nights. But when Coach Tomey came, we kicked off the ball at 1 o'clock in the afternoon because of the East Coast time. So
Hmm.
those are all the progress that he made as a coach.
Yeah. And I see parallels between his career at Hawaii and then what happened at Arizona as well.
Mhm.
Um, for for a coach to have the kind of lasting impact he had in people's lives, he never won a national championship. He tied for the Pac-10 title at the time in '93. It was actually a three-way tie, but no titles at UH. Uh, in the book, I had Lance Tominaga on for episode 1, and there's like some palpable regret, like just not being able to quite get over the hill with BYU seemed to be the thorn in the side for the longest time for U of H. What do you think it was about him being so close to that edge, but not quite getting there, that still led? I mean, he's beloved, and Arizona realized, I think, after the fact, after he left, like, winning 8 or 9 games is better than winning 2 or 3. Uh, there were certainly, I think, some parallels where maybe he didn't quite beat BYU, or for Arizona, maybe it was UCLA or USC, but he was still immensely successful, just not
Yeah,
necessarily in the record book, but still successful in the record book. I mean,
yeah.
it's kind of a
He
complicated question, and I didn't phrase it
he
very
was a
well.
difference maker. He came and took those programs and left it in way better shape than when he found it. I
Hmm.
think that's the legacy of Coach Tomey. He just made believers out of schools, and I think Coach Tomey was a great defensive mind. And the teams that I played on under him are hard nosed type of teams. Teams
Hmm.
that I think the reason why we couldn't get past BYU is we didn't have quite the offense to overcome BYU. Because
Hmm.
some of those offenses at BYU, you got to remember, in those days, BYU had a Heisman Trophy winner.
Yeah,
He had a Super Bowl
yeah.
winning quarterback,
Jim
and Jim.
McMahon. Yeah.
You know, yeah. I mean, I spoke with Coach Whittingham because me and him went at it. He was a middle linebacker for BYU. And no question, we had some great defensive teams, which kind of mirror what you said in Arizona. Because when I was in the NFL and I heard about the Desert Swarm, I'm like, oh, that's Coach Toby. And the fact that when I went over to the Niners and I played on an innovative offense under Coach Bill Walsh, it crossed my mind, like, man, if we did some of this stuff at Hawaii, we kill everybody because we had a pretty good defense.
For sure. Yeah.
So I think that's the reason. Coach Tomey, coached some tough teams, but when we play against a team that was so talented offensively and had a wide open offensive approach, they got us, and not they blew us out, but they got us like the game we played against BYU when we were 7-0. They fumbled into the end zone. They recovered it for them to win
Mhm.
that game.
Yeah,
So it was a defensive battle at the end of the day.
right.
But because I played in some of the best offensive teams put together with the Niners, I think back and I'm like, man,
Yeah,
if we could match this offense with the defenses that Coach Tomey had, we'd blow everybody out.
right, right.
But
Well, he
but
was known as being fiercely loyal to his players,
yes.
and would you say is there a specific memory of that you have where he went to bat for either you or a teammate that really showed that aspect of his character?
Well, Coach Tomey wasn't afraid to play walk-ons that put up the effort. You know, there was some of those teams. We had some walk-ons that make significant difference um, uh, on our team, and part of that is because Coach Tomey loved those type of players, the overachievers.
Hmm.
Maybe guys that worked hard but didn't get the scholarship because they didn't run the 40 and 4.6. But the effort. Sometimes you can run a 40 and 4.8 and go out there and play like you run a 4.7
Right.
out of effort. And Coach Tomey loved those type of players. And what brought our team together is because we knew, as I was a highly recruited guy. I knew that Coach Tomey loved everybody. He just didn't love me because I'm Jesse Sapolu. That was his number one recruit, that
Yeah.
year. He loved Larry Goers, Doug Kyle, hard nosed guys that came that came to Hawaii to play just because they didn't want to give up football, and ended up becoming a significant part of our success.
Yeah.
And that forms a family when nobody feels like anybody's getting preferential treatment, which is a little bit different than when I came to the NFL.
For
I
sure.
realized there's a different culture there.
Yeah.
But what Coach Tomey was able to build in Hawaii was a family oriented team, and he believed in players that worked hard and players that put the team first,
Yeah. That's it.
first and foremost over any individual. So that was
100%.
important.
Yeah. Looking back, how do you think your decision, that last minute change of heart to stay home, changed the path of your life?
I think it worked out well for me from the standpoint. Now, here's the thing: I had to earn everything that I earned in the NFL because I came in as an 11th round draft choice. Meaning, for me to crack the starting lineup, I had to really outdo a lot of people before the 49ers got to me to go in the game and started playing. But I think the advantage is that I became a significant part of the 49ers. That's a West Coast team. We won a lot of Super Bowls. And the fact that I stayed home and played for a hard-nosed coach that brought the community together to believe that Hawaii is a D1 program,
Mhm.
made it made my life the way it is now. I just got interviewed the other day, and people say, "Why are the 49ers Hawaii's favorite team? How did that happen?" I'm like, "Well, because I stayed home when I had a chance to go elsewhere, and people always remember that. The business people always remember that."
Mhm. For sure. Did I lose
And part of that is the fact that Coach Tomey made people understand that, hey, Jesse had a chance to go anywhere, but he,
you?
he sacrificed to stay home, and you guys need to appreciate that.
Yeah. Mhm.
And I appreciate him for that.
Yeah. Without a doubt. In your view, what would you say is Coach Tomey's lasting impact on the game of football, Hawaii football in particular, and on the players that he coached?
I think what Coach Tomey means to me is Coach Tomey brings people together. You know, uh, it, you remember I talked about the walk-on guys and the top scholarship guys. He brings people together. I heard that I wasn't surprised when I heard it that he was the first one to start these coaching meetings in the off season. He had a golf tournament where all the coaches come together to share ideas and get to know one another. That's Coach Tomey. you
Yeah.
know. Uh, uh, but also, Coach Tomey taught me to not be like when I came to the Niners, man. When there were people that tapped out in practice, when I'm thinking, man, we're just getting started, and that hard nose approach by Coach Tomey, he loved you, but man, if you didn't do the right thing, he'll let you know. You
Yeah.
know, some of the we still joke about it today with some of the UH guys. Moments when Coach Tomey got mad and he just called you out in front of everybody.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who you are. But for me, that's really what made me survive the tough games that I played in, even with the 49ers.
Hmm.
Like I said, when practice gets hard, man, there were guys that tapped out, and I knew why they tapped out because they didn't practice very hard,
Yeah.
or at least the way we practice at Hawaii
Yeah.
in humidity. So the mental toughness, it's funny because I still carry myself from that hard nosed, you know, approach of Coach Tomey, and Coach Tomey came to the Niners for a year,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
After
and
San Jose.
right, and then I just retired. I mean, well, I was retired, but I was still working for the team, and Coach Tomey was like he was an advisor, I think, coach.
Yeah.
And we sat in Seattle after we lost. We weren't very good at the time. And and he said something, and I said, "Well, Coach, that's not good enough." It's almost like I'm reminding him on how his standard that he raised me under.
Yeah.
And I was aware of what I just said, and I'm thinking, wow, I've come a long ways. Here I am reminding Coach Tomey, to hold these guys accountable,
Right.
for not winning football
Yeah.
games.
Just that grittiness, that toughness, a lot of like rock fights, like 7 to 6 games, where
Yes.
just
Oh
every
yeah.
down matters. No
Oh
finesse.
yeah.
It's all just smash mouth football.
Exactly. And how BYU beat us is because they had some finesse to them.
Yeah.
They open up, they spread out the field a little bit. But you're right, man. I mean, but the one thing I did bring from Hawaii with me, man, my technique and my hard nosed inside zone blocking was as good as anybody the Niners had. And part of that is, like you said, they knew what was coming, but we're going to do it anyways.
Yeah. Well, Jesse, sadly, we lost Coach Tomey in 2019, a brief bout with cancer. You spoke at an event to honor him. If you had a chance to sit down with Coach today and say a word to him, what would you say?
Thank you. Thank you for challenging me at a pivotal time of my life that was so important in developing my life because I have three sons and I raised them not as hard nosed like Coach Tomey raised me and not as hard nosed as my parents raised me because obviously times change, believe it or not. But I still raised them in the demanding way of the expectations of what they need to do,
Mm-hmm.
and not settle for anything less.
Yeah.
Meaning, the only difference between what Coach Tomey did to me and what I did to my sons is I didn't scream at my sons and cuss them out more. But,
Yeah.
I'm very thankful of that because honestly, Toby, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that.
That's tremendous.
And that's the honest truth,
Yeah.
I think I'm afraid that the kids of today can't handle that stuff. But for me, as far as I'm concerned, I wouldn't be where I'm at today without
Yeah.
that that challenge and that upbringing.
Yeah. Completely get that. I, one of the quotes I heard him say repeatedly, not just to players, but to his staff, was you're either coaching it or you're allowing it to happen. And that's how a culture gets built. Like if you let something slide, if, like you said, if one of your teammates taps out and no one says anything, then the message sent is we quit.
It's
We
okay.
are willing to shut it down before we have to. But if someone gets in their face, you really have to love somebody to call them out, and that's tough. And then this generation, I
Yeah,
have a son of my own. That's hard to do. You don't want to end up in jail for abusing your kids. But
yeah.
excuse me.
It's it's a little different, and I don't agree with the way things are now. But social media has changed a lot of things
Yeah,
too. So it's it's almost like we're not allowed to be that hard.
yeah,
You know, but I just wish we could go back to the foundation of how it was, because I mean it's not for everybody, but for the majority of us it's necessary. you know
yeah,
and I think Coach Tomey, and when Coach Tomey, after he gets through you know challenging you and calling you out and telling you the truth in your face, he the way he approaches you to let you know the next day he did it because he loved you,
yeah.
it just makes it all worthwhile.
Right. Well, Jesse, can't thank you enough for your time. Uh, Not lost on me. There are literally two humans in the history of the human race that have more Super Bowl rings than you, and that's the list: Tom Brady, Ken Norton Jr., and then you. And so I am so thankful for your time, for sharing your heart. I know Coach Tomey means a lot to a lot of people, and I really appreciate getting your insights on the man, especially early in his career.
Well, thank you, Tug. Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
One last thing here, if you could just introduce yourself and say, "And I am undone." However, you would introduce yourself and say, "And I am undone."
But say that again.
You just,
Introduce myself. How?
yeah, just introduce yourself. Like, my name is Jesse Sapolu, and I am undone.
And I am undone.
Yeah,
What?
the podcast is called Becoming Undone. I always just have my
Oh,
guests say, "And I am undone."
and I am undone.
Yep,
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Jesse Sapolu, San Francisco 49ers, University of Hawaii, and I am undone.
tremendous. Thank you so much, sir.
All right.
All right, you'll be up next week.
Yep.
All right,
Yep.
thanks so much.
Thank you.